Hello, it's 6:30 p.m. on March 27th, and I'm calling to order this meeting of the Council of the Town of Oakville. Madam Clerk, we have no regrets this evening. Everybody's here, including someone all the way from Cuba. And Cuba looks like it's hot and sunny because the tan has already gotten started. I would like to invite everybody now to join Council in O Canada. Thank you, everybody. In 1820, Indigenous people here began welcoming settlers from all over the empire. Soon, they were helping slaves escaping from the United States to settle here, too. Today, our Indigenous founding partners are still here enjoying this land with us. They fish and camp under their treaty rights. Indigenous people in their thousands also live with us as neighbors and friends. Our Indigenous white and black settlers created a community with an attractive degree of harmony and prosperity. In 1857, Ontario gave official recognition of Oakville as a town. At Town Hall, all of these years later, we fly the flag of the Mississaugas of the Credit beside the flags of Oakville, Ontario, and Canada. We fly these flags together to acknowledge our origins. People from all over the world are attracted to the livability that we have created. We offer newcomers a warm spirit of welcome. We offer everyone our founding story so everyone knows what we are part of. We feel sorrow and distress for acts of racism and intolerance that are suffered across Canada and here at home. We want our future to be equitable and inclusive for all. The path of truth and reconciliation can unite us all. Please keep well, stay safe, and let us on Council know of any chance to be helpful to you and yours. Please let us know anytime you can help increase Oakville's harmony, prosperity, and livability. Council, I understand there are some declarations of interest to be declared. Councillor Knoll.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I would like to declare a conflict on 7.5, which is the budget for business improvement areas, specifically with respect to item number 3 under that agenda matter. That's the Kerr Village Business Improvement Area. I am the shareholder, director, and officer of a couple corporations that lease the entirety of 171 Spears Road, which is in the catchment area of the Kerr BIA.
You might be a very large funder of that organization.
I believe I am.
All right, you will not participate in Council's work on this item. Council, it now would be in order for 2 of us to move and second the confirmation of the minutes of the previous Council meetings. Councillor Shee and Councillor McNeice, thank you. Any objections? There being none, they're carried. Thank you. We now need to resolve into committee of the whole. If we could get a mover and seconder, Councillor Dudek and Councillor Nanda, thank you. And I see no objection, and so that's carried as well. I'll now look for a motion for the consent items. Councillor Adams, thank you. I understand we're going to separate the one Councillor Knoll has a conflict on so that we can show him as not voting on that. And we'll separate the item from that. And are there any other separations? Councillor O'Meara.
Yes, Your Worship. Item 7.5, please.
So you're talking about 7.5, Part 2?
Sorry, I just see 7.5. Yes, sorry. Part 2. Oh, my apologies. Yes, Part 2. Yes, thank you.
All right, so that item is separated as well. Are there any other separations? Councillor Elgar.
Mayor Burton, well, we haven't said it yet, but confidential consent item 8.1, 1094, third line.
All right. We're separating that one too from the motion.
And at the appropriate time, go into camera at the end of the meeting, if that works.
Yes, Councillor, one thing at a time. We'll get there.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to call the vote on the balance of, in other words, the unseparated items. Is there any objection to the unseparated items? Madam Clerk, there is no objection, and so they are carried. So now, 7.5, item 3, I'm going to call the vote. And the purpose of this is to allow Councillor Knoll to not participate in the vote because of his declared interest in the matter. Is there any objection to that item? None. So therefore, Madam Clerk, that's carried and Councillor Knoll has not participated. And now we turn to 7.5, Part 2, which was not included in that motion, and because it was separated, and that is separated by Councillor O'Meara. And Councillor O'Meara, you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Worship. To be honest, Councillor McNeice and I were talking really quickly about what we do. So if you don't mind, Your Worship, can I pass the floor to Councillor McNeice first, and then I can follow up, if that's okay?
Thank you, Your Worship. So we just have a few questions on these budgets, and thank you to staff and all the BAs for preparing them. And it was really helpful to kind of see all three spread out together. So I'll start with a couple questions for staff. So these budgets, does it sort of come from a template that we provide? I'm just trying to understand if we're categorically, are we comparing sort of apples to apples?
Through you, Mayor Burton, we do provide a template to the BIAs.
Okay, thank you for that. So just looking through sort of the revenue side of things, I understand sort of the tax levy that comes in, and various BIAs have other sort of revenue items, whether it's grants or sponsorships. Do we provide any guidance, or are there any sort of BIA best practices that we strive for in these?
Through you, Mayor Burton, we don't provide guidance specifically unless we're asked, for instance, if there are some issues the BIA is having and they have questions, we'll support them. But really the BIA board prepares the budget and the members approve it.
Okay, thank you. So just sort of working down these budgets on the expenses side, is it fair? I see some slight kind of wording difference across the three budgets, but administrative is overheads or your staff. I see they all sort of have a marketing line, a beautification line, and an event. So those are kind of the four key categories that we can sort of look across. Is that fair? Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay. And sort of analyzing these, are there any targets that we're trying to hit? Like it seems a few have about a third of administrative overhead costs. Some have about 50%. Do you have sort of a comparison between them, or?
Through you, Mayor Burton, we don't provide comparisons between them. They're really individual boards and memberships, and they determine what their budget will be.
Okay, I'll defer to Councillor O'Meara for now. Thank you.
So, Your Worship, if you don't mind.
Councillor O'Meara, we're
Thank
all
you.
interested to know where we're going with this.
No problem. So I guess, Commissioner, Can you please break down from the spreadsheets you have in front of you, what is the administrative difference between the three BIAs that you see from the spreadsheets that you've been given?
Through you, Mayor Burton, administration for the Bronte BIA is 54% of their budget. Downtown is 34% and Kerr Street is 35%.
And would you be able to, from the same spreadsheet, delineate from events or activation, what that percentage is?
For events, so for downtown, about 3% of their budget for events and 19% for Kerr Street. Bronte does not show anything in that line.
Can you, so maybe this is a question for the executive director of Bronte. I don't know if she's available to, maybe can she, sorry, just wait, so it's 30 and 19 and 0? We don't understand what that is. Are those numbers correct? Yes, for events, sorry, just to reiterate what you said, sorry, just so I'm clear, 30, 19, and 0?
Oh, I'm sorry. Through you, Mayor Burton, sorry. So for, let me just find them here, make sure I've got them correct. Events is 3% for downtown. I don't see anything for, well, livable, I guess, slightly about 0.2%, I guess, for Bronte.
Okay, and I apologize, so I'm hearing 3% for
For
downtown. I heard
downtown,
19 somewhere.
19% for Kerr Street.
For Kerr. So 3, 19, and 0.2% for Bronte. Is that what you're reading off of the spreadsheets you have there?
It is, yes.
Okay. Okay. So I guess my question would be, do you know, or does the town keep track of statistics or region-wide or municipality-wide where those range and what those ranges would be or would not be? I mean, from an oversight perspective, that's our job here, is to oversee things. Do we keep a record or a trend of what is spent where on BIA stuff, or no?
Through you, Mayor Burton, they prepare their budgets. We send them to council for approval. We do incorporate them in the annual audit, and they're in our financial statements. So we do look at their actual spending versus their budgets. And you can see, I'm just trying to look to see if the actuals are on the report. We do look at that. If there are issues with that, then we work with the BIAs on it. I'm not sure, John Vanderheiden is also online. I'm not sure if he wants to add to that.
Sure thing. Through you, Mayor Burton, to the councillor. In regards to your question about tracking to other BIAs in the region, we do not take a look and benchmark anything for our BIAs compared to them or within the province even. There's a lot of BIAs in the province, but we don't do any work at that level.
Okay, and I say that with the full knowledge that council is ultimately responsible for BIAs and BIA budgets and how that money gets spent. And at any given time, a small number of people can control a large amount of money. And I guess my question to staff is, how do we ensure that that money is being monitored holistically across a large plate of it's a large buffet of servings, and how do we ensure that we are not an anomaly, but we're tracking along with other BIAs on an aggregate level, I guess, would be my question. Or do we not do that? I mean, that's a fair question. If we just don't do it, that's fine, we don't do it. But what are we doing to protect ourselves from the liability of not knowing what one small BIA is doing compared to what regional BIAs are doing?
Through you, Mayor Burton, and I'm not sure if I'm answering the way with what you're looking for. We don't monitor the BIA budgets, a particular BIA against other BIAs. Our role is to work with them. They prepare their budget, council approves it. We ensure that their spending is in alignment with that approved budget. If it was outside of it, then it's outside of the Municipal Act, and we would have to work with them on that. But as far as comparing a particular budget of a BIA against other BIAs, that isn't staff's role. That really is the board and the membership of that BIA to determine their budget. We're levying taxes to raise the funds based on their budget, so their membership needs to be vocal in their opinions on the budget as it's being approved by them.
So I guess my difficult question here is ultimately who's responsible? If stuff goes sideways, if stuff goes in a place that nobody's comfortable with, and budgets and businesses are neglectful of their responsibility to be good stewards of where their taxes go to, who's the responsible? Who is the level of government, or who is the ultimate level that's responsible for where this stuff goes?
Councillor, it's we've had a lot of experience with BIAs that have had a need for supervision, and we've never hesitated to supply that supervision. If you review the BIA section of the Municipal Act, you'll see spelled out very clearly what the town's powers are to correct a BIA that goes astray. It includes firing the board and replacing the board with as little as one member only, which we have done. We've never done that to your BIA. And so if you have two options at this point, I think, depending on where it is you're trying to go with this. Having served on the boards of all three BIAs, I would be happy to meet with you and your colleague and answer questions in depth and see where they lead you. Or you could request a report, but it sounds to me like you really, it sounds to me like you're not ready to ask for a report, because a report normally, you sort of know what you want to get. So is the offer of a conversation as a first step towards getting wherever you want to go, is that
Your Worship,
congenial?
you're perfect. You're reading my mind here. I appreciate that. I wanted, and I'm thankful that staff highlighted the 54, 34, 35 percentage. And I think that's where a lot of people I've heard from in the past week got to, and they said, hey, we've got a problem here. And I'm happy to have that conversation with yourself and Councillor McNeese as well. Thank him for the work he's done to do that. And I would much appreciate that conversation after the fact with this. So with that, Your Worship, I'm happy to move receipt of the item before us with the acknowledgement that we'll have a conversation with yourself and all parties moving forward.
We already have the motion on the floor, and when we've exhausted questions and speakers, I'll call the vote on that. Councillor Haslett-Deal is next.
Mayor Burton, I just wanted to add to my council colleague, I'd be pleased to share with you some practices we have at the Oakville downtown BIA. I'm very proud of their financial record and the performance and how they've distributed the funds was widely discussed against our strategy, but I'd be pleased to help as well if that would be helpful to you.
Thank you, Councillor Haslett-Deal. Councillor McNeese.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one last question. Just on page 75 of our staff report, bottom line there, referencing the event strategy, 10,000 contribution. I understand some BIAs take it, some don't. Could I just have a better understanding why, say, a BIA wouldn't take a town grant for 10,000 for, it sounds like, activations, events, sort of things of that nature?
Councillor, could you repeat your question? Perhaps
Okay, so
aim it at the microphone more. Maybe I can hear it.
I'll lean in. $10,000 for, I guess it's events. The town provides it to, or offers it to each BIA, is my understanding, and this is the bottom of the staff report, page 75. It looks like one BIA took it this year, two did not. I just want to sort of get an understanding why a BIA would not take additional funding town provided for events.
I believe the first place to turn to would be the BIA to ask them. And if that suffices for you for now, I'll go back to Councillor Haslet-Deal for a second time. No? Yes? Councillor Duddick?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, I wonder if we've got Doug Sams, who's head of the OBIA now, and wonder if he can maybe provide some insight, at least from the Kerr component, as to why you have foregone the $10,000. That might assist.
Mr. Sams, I wonder if you could assist council. Welcome and congratulations.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of things about best practices. When I first came to Kerr Village, we were meeting with Gordon Lalonde, who is second in command, and we all had to adopt a constitution that he provided. We were allowed to make edits, but everything is clearly spelled out in that constitution and the municipal act, which the constitution was approved by town council. So we are required to use the same auditor as the town, which is KPMG. We are also have to provide quarterly reports to the town. We do have a finance staff. We have somebody in charge of finance. So we follow our best practices. Best governance are the quarterly reports, the Constitution, and I do consult with our town staff. We have a great town staff on finances. Jonathan Vanderheiden, Jade Surgener, and Carol Yang, they have helped us. We got hit this year with a tremendous tax write-off appeal bill. It was staggering. It was so staggering that Jonathan and Jade walked through my door one day and said, we need to tell you this in person so you don't pass out. So that did affect our budget. Inflation did. We've had good years, and this year was a little bit tougher year. We ran a great event. And but you know, the fiscal year, the budget year never match up. We just got our third 2022 payment. We'll get our next one at the end of the 2022 budget year next month. So there are protocols in place. The board sets the strategic plan, the budget. The town does have to approve it. They streamline the budget so we can tell where the variances are, where the issues are. And I'm just got to applaud town staff. They've been great whenever we've approached them. We always try to work with them. And, you know, that's pretty much best practices. And, you know, at the OBIA level, we preach that to our members on our best practices call. So I hope that kind of helps and clarifies. We will be taking the 10,000 again this year. We're going to run Kerrfest Kids, and we're going to run our tree lighting, but we're not going to do Kerrfest because the inflationary pressure that we faced under that forced us, events have changed because of post-COVID and inflation. So we need to take a year off, take a deep breath, but still offer some activations to the community. I'd be glad to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Sams. Let's see if there are any left. Apparently not. Oh, Councillor O'Meara.
Yes, sir.
Spoke too soon.
Sorry, thank you, Your Worship. So, Mr. Sams, thank you very much for all your work and across Ontario and Oakville and Kersey. So I apologize if I missed it. So you will be taking the $10,000 this year then?
Yes, we are. I don't know where that rumor got started, but we are
Yes.
taking it. I think it was because we decided as a board, and on my recommendation from a fiscal standpoint, we need to take a year off from Kerrfest. And, you know, part of it's just our budget has not kept up with inflation. If you recall in 2020, that next year with the pandemic, we actually reduced our budget. And if I could see in a crystal ball what inflation was going to be in 2023, maybe we would reconsider that. But we have to live with that, and we're living with it now, so we'll do the best we can.
And Mr. Sams, so you would find that activation events are still a key part of your Kersey BIA?
We believe it's an important part of the mandate of a BIA to put feet on the streets, yes. So is that the perfect answer? No, probably not, but you try different things with marketing and events and just to show people your vibrancy and vitality of your area, and you want to also encourage economic development. So it's something that our community can be proud of. Thank you.
All righty, thank you, Mr. Sams. I'm going to put the vote. Is there any objection to approving the budget for the Brawny Village Business Improvement Area? Madam Clerk, there's no objection, and that carries. So that brings us to item 8.1, the confidential consent item. And Councillor Elgar is moving that the subject matter, first, we have 2 listed delegations on this matter, and they need to be heard in public before, Councillor Elgar, before we go into camera. But I understand it's your wish to go into camera. So, Madam Clerk, would you call the listed delegations?
Yes, the first delegation is Brian Burton. Oh. Patricia, did you want to delegate first? Okay. Do you want to come to the middle podium?
Welcome, Ms. Bolton. Council looks forward to your information.
Good evening, Mayor Burton, and through you, good evening, Council. Thank you for hearing me tonight. I'd also like to express my appreciation to the town clerk and for helping with the technical aspects of getting my presentation. It was not an easy thing, and I actually had to leave out one slide, so I printed it off in order to email it. So I printed it off, and you can take a look at it. So I am the tenant at 1094 Third Line, and for those, I'll wait for the first slide. There we go. For those who don't know the property, it's an excellent example of mid-century modern architecture. It's a 1,700 square foot bungalow that sits at the corner of Third Line and North Service Road at the edge of the Merton Conservation Lands. This property was built in about 1960, and for those of you, and it was owned by the province of Ontario. And the province made significant upgrades and modifications to it before it was transferred to the town in 2018. It's a little worn around the edges on the inside, as you can see from the original kitchen, but it's very functional. So it's a little worn, maybe a little dated, but just like me. So that doesn't. Next slide. So as I say, this was originally built in 1960 by Roy and Gladys Spears as their dream retirement home. They lived there until the early 70s, or at least Gladys did. Roy died in the late 60s, and it was part of the green belt that never happened under the Bill Davis government. So the province had expropriated this property, and they put it up for rent. And my parents, Millicent and Cliff Bolton, moved in 1976, and it's been the center of our family home since then for, well, 4 generations. I became the tenant in 2008. I had to return from overseas to care for my mother. She was run down by a car crossing in the road in Bronte, and she was disabled. So I returned from my overseas job. I had sold up my own house and everything and moved overseas, not expecting to return, but here I was. That included paying the rent, and that's how I became the province's tenant at 1094 Third Line. I was my mom's essential caregiver for 13 years as she deteriorated until her death in late 2021. Because of the pandemic, we've still not had her funeral, so I'm still dealing with those issues, and this whole thing has been very upsetting. The house and lease was included in the purchase of the Merton lands by the town from the province in 2018 to protect it against development. And in that agreement, it made the house protected by the Merton Lands Conservation Agreement as well. The covenant places restrictions on what can be done with the house, and it's very limited as to what can be done. Next slide. Oh, in between this is the handout that I gave you that wouldn't email. I just wanted to let you know how successful the Merton Lands Conservation Reserve Agreement has been. These are some of the species that are in this protected area, undisturbed area of woodlands and open fields. It's the last significant open space south of Dundas. And as a biologist and conservationist, I live quite happily with all these creatures and species. You can see how many of them there are. There's threatened species in there. There's eastern milk snakes. Last summer saw the return of brown bats. And there's some rare Kentucky coffee trees. The fireflies are back. There's Jack in the Pulpit. It also is a great asset for flood mitigation and addressing Oakville's climate emergency. So the issue that we have now is that I would like to stay in the house for a while. Staff maintains that the capital cost is too high to do the upgrades, and they don't think it's worth the value of the house. They want to demolish it. My position is the direct operating costs on a monthly basis are very low, and it actually leaves, in my calculation, the rent exceeds the direct operating cost by about $10,000 a year. The town hasn't applied for annual increase. The house is under the Residential Tenancies Act, and so it's been under rent control for the last 47 years since my parents moved in. And since 2018, the town hasn't applied for the annual increases that are allowed. So the rent, yes, is very low, but it's not as low as it could be. So, as I say, the solution that the town is presenting is to evict me and demolish the house. There are two sort of barriers to this that I see. You need permission from under the covenant, you need permission from Infrastructure Ontario to break the covenant. And this is affordable housing. This is what happens with rent control after 47 years. So when town is looking at affordable housing, this is what happens. And as I said, I'm not asking for any upgrades to the property. I'm just asking, next slide. So staff are saying this is purely a financial issue. For me, it's more than a financial issue. This is my life. We've all gone through a period of huge upset over the last 3 years. We still have post-pandemic confusion. We don't really know. The economy seems to be hanging on an edge. Economic volatility. I'm still dealing with grief issues. And the world, I don't know about you, but the world just feels like it's falling apart. Every time, I've had to stop listening to the news because it just makes it sleepless nights for me. As a single senior, again, I have to do everything myself. So the prospect for me is quite overwhelming, and it's adding to my already heightened anxiety. What I'm asking for of you is time. I'm asking you to allow for an up to 5-year lease moving in June rather than December. I also don't want to be having to move in the middle of winter. And I'm looking for time to settle my life, to envision what my life will be, where I should go, how will I get there. And I'm really hoping that you will give me the time that I need. You can defer all the essential expenses. I'll increase the rent allowable under the RTA. And I'm open to looking for further resolution of how expenses can be minimized or shared for the capital issues as they arise. Finally, so thank you for your time. I'm hoping that you will hear my presentation and act on it accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bolton, for your information. Are there questions? Thank you. Madam Clerk, Councilor O'Meara?
Thank you, Your Worship, and I apologize, Ms. Bolton, for the extended walk there. So how big is the property you're at right now?
The property itself, the whole Merton lands, I don't know how big the Merton lands are, but they run from North Service Road on 3rd Line all the way along up 14 Mile Creek to Upper Middle Road.
No, the land that you're renting.
The house itself, originally, my parents had 25 acres on that corner, but then in the early 80s, the government, the province took back 25. So the house sits on 2 acres of land that I maintain and garden. I love my garden. So that's how big the property is. The house itself is about 1,700 square foot bungalow, 3-bedroom square.
Okay, so it's about a 2-acre piece of land, and because this is a public information session and all residents sort of are involved in this, I don't know whether you're willing to admit what you pay monthly, or if you don't, I'm not sure what the protocol for that is, Your Worship, but do you mind that, or is that inappropriate, Your Worship? I'll look at you for that.
She can answer the question if she wishes.
The rent right now is, because it's been under rent control for 47 years, the rent is about $1,250. And if the increases under the Residential Tenancies Act had been applied, it would be around $1,400.
So with the latest average rentals in Oakville and what we're looking at, I believe, I think a 1-bedroom home is about $2,200. I'm sure for you, would you be willing to go to market rent for the property and pay what that entails?
That's, well, first of all, I don't think that's allowed under the Residential Tenancies Act. And depending on what the market rate was set at, that would force me out as well, probably, because the affordability crisis in Oakville is astounding.
So I guess my question then, Ms. Bolton, is as horrible as it is to say, and as thousands of people in your exact same position are out there going, somebody please help me, you have an opportunity to have council say, yeah, we'll let you do it. I guess the question is, why are we not able to offer this to everybody? What is it that you should get that and nobody else should get that?
Well, we've been there for 47 years. It's our family home. We've got 4 generations have gone through that house. And under the rent control legislation, if you have rent-controlled properties, this is what happens. I'm just asking not to move. I'm just asking for the status quo under the Residential Tenancies Act.
Certainly, and in 2018, we had this exact same discussion, did we not? And we said, hey, we'll give you another...
I wasn't here in 20...
Fair
I
enough,
didn't
sorry.
come in 2018.
The owner of the property, your parents at that time, I guess, where does this end? So what stops in 5 years from you saying I need another 5 years? So where does this come to where it's green space for everyone in Oakville, and we're going to naturalize it and make it green space as we shrink in green space, and it was always planned to be green space. Where does this end? What stops in another 5 years from you saying, well, I just coming back to council and say, I need another 5 years, I need another 5 years? Where does this stop? And where the town of Oakville's plan of where it needs to be green space for all Oakville residents, where does that end?
Well, first of all, it's not a public park, it's a conservation reserve. So it's not an active park. And under the covenant, it's not allowed to be changed to an active park. It's a conservation reserve. So that's one point. I would be willing, if I could get an extension, I would be willing to, if I could get it to the right place, I'd be willing to sign a termination notification.
And
So
what
that
would
it would
look
be,
like?
it would put a deadline on my moving out.
What would that deadline be?
I would like it to be, well, I would like 5 years, but I would negotiate, maybe 3 years.
So from this council meeting to 3 years from now, you'd be willing to sign? Your worship,
I would be willing to sign a termination agreement.
I'm done, your worship, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Meara. Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you, Worship. Just a quick question. With this notification of eviction, I don't like using that word, but a notification, when were you advised that this was going to happen?
It's,
What year and what month? Sorry.
I don't remember.
Okay. So you don't remember when you got the first notice that?
Well, the notice changed. There's been a couple.
What year would that be?
I think it was last year,
So 2020.
mid last year.
So 2022 was the
2022.
first you noticed or had notice of you had to move out. Is that
For the date of December 31st, 2024.
Thank you.
But that was also the middle of the pandemic, so.
Thank you very much for the time you gave us.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, would you call the next delegate?
The next delegate is Brian Burton.
Welcome, Mr. Burton. Council looks forward to your information.
Oh, I'm sure you have. I'm sure you are. Oh, boy, you started right away before I even got a chance. Okay, quickly, give you a background. I live on 1094, I live on Braes Lane. It backs onto the Merton lands, and you've heard how big it is. So can you imagine 10 years ago, I'm sitting in my backyard, and back there is a bulldozer, a backhoe, a drill string, and an architectural guys doing survey work. You phone up the Minister of Infrastructure who owns it and ask them, what are they doing? They say, we're taking inventory with a backhoe and a drill string. Oh yeah, we're taking inventory. Nobody knows anything except we're taking inventory. Fortunately, you can get access to information, which I did, paid the $200. I got it, and the plan was, and it was going to council, we're taking inventory because we're going to put 64 townhouses along 3rd line. We're going to put warehousing all along 14 Mile. We're going to take the Braes Lake Parkette and we're going to drive a road through that to access all that. Now, fortunately for me and for all of us that lived on Braes Lane, they were in the middle of an election. So we managed to get enough people together at Queen Elizabeth Park to raise such a stink that the Kevin Flynn, he was the candidate and the MPP of record, agreed to withdraw the proposal to build the 64 townhouses. And they would put a process in place to guarantee that this would never happen again. 4 years later, the proposal was withdrawn from council, but 4 years later, we still don't have the agreement to protect it. Fortunately, there's another election coming up. So this time the agreement came out in 2018, and the agreement was they would sell the Merton lands to the province for $16 million, and the protection would be they would put in a restrictive covenant agreement and a conservation covenant agreement to ensure that this didn't happen ever again. They also gave us a letter from Mr. Murray that stated, it is our intention to maintain the current leases in place on the property located at the corner of Third Line and North Service Road, currently known as the Third Line West. Third Line land. So the province intended to keep the leases, and they put 2 covenants in place to protect the leases. And that's the background. And that's why yours truly, who's old and grouchy, is here once again over the Merton lands. 10 years we've been at this. Okay, as you've heard from Trish, Oakville purchased the Merton lands in 2018 for the province. This included the ranch-style bungalow built by Roy and Gladys Spears in 1960. The bungalow was expropriated by the provincial government and rented to a nice young couple, and they had it for 2 years, and would you luck have it, they won the lottery. So out they moved, and it went back up for public tender, and my mother-in-law won the bid and got a 5-year contract with an automatic renewal for another 5 years. That's been by the by since then, and now since then it's just been year over year for 46 years, going on 47. The province, in the last 5 years they owed it, spent a fortune renovating it. I give you a list of the renovations, including all new windows and doors and re-waterproofing the whole base, the whole outside, new flooring throughout. Now, despite all these renovations, the town still wants to demolish the house, as the renovations are not up to the town's standards, and the cost of the town's specified repairs are just too much to bear. The real issue is the town is grossly unhappy with the affordable rent due to 46 years of rent control. Now, having been a landlord myself, I can appreciate how awful the rent control is, but too bad it's on my side this time, not yours. Unfortunately for the town, the whole reason for the purchase was to restrict the change of use. So it included a restrictive covenant agreement and a conservation covenant agreement. The conservation covenant requires the town to obtain the Minister of Infrastructure approval for removal of any building and an approval for a change of permitted use. The conservation agreement also requires the town to provide affordable housing within 7 years, not to reduce the supply, even if it is just by 1. The penalty for noncompliance is the town sells the province back the property. The restrictive covenant agreement is even more important. You need provincial approval to override the sole purpose of selling the property was to maintain the current use of the property. And here we are, trying to get you guys to overturn the sole use of the property. And then to get to the issue that you've come up with, we think it's flimsy, especially as the town. They provided a civil engineer to look at the structure, and he said it's solid and well built. We feel that the renovations that the town wants, that the province did, were more than sufficient, and the town's list of renovations are unasked for, overpriced, and not necessary. There are some serious risks for the towns to proceed down this path. The Landlord and Tenant Board will likely refuse to even hear the case if all the approvals are not in place. If the town tries for the approvals and they're turned down, then good luck. You're stuck with the rent forever, or at least until there's a change of government. The risk is that the province, who are still suffering from the business over the Greenbelt, is not in a good mood to overturn another conservation agreement, as well as overriding the sole purpose of the sale, which was to maintain the current use of the property. I mean, if the sole use goes, then maybe the province just says, well, we'll buy the property back, because the only reason for doing it was to protect it, not have it change of use. Our risk, from our point of view, is that we lose at the tribunal, and my sister-in-law, a very nice senior lady, is out on the only town-owned affordable housing unit, and on New Year's Eve to boot. The community risk, and this is the more serious one, is that overturning the sole reason for the purchase weakens the protections built into the purchase agreement. Now, my lawyer, who had many goes together, told me courts and tribunals are a real crapshoot. You lose the ones you should win, and you win the ones you should lose. Never litigate, always negotiate. And that's why we're here today. We would much rather negotiate. And we will negotiate that at the end of whatever term we can come to, we will vacate the house without putting up any arguments. We will also accept an increase in the rent that you're forgone, and you're entitled to 3% per year for improvements. We'll pay that forward as well. And on top of that, we can live without any improvements because we don't think it's necessary. And especially since the town has admitted to us, some of the improvements can be put off for 3 to 4 years. And lastly, when you look at the cost of demolishing this building and bringing it back to the conservation standards, it's going to be an expensive proposition, probably in the neighborhood of $100,000. So if we agree to an extension, then at least you can put that $100,000 cost off. And more importantly, it gives you guys time to think about how we're going to deal with the covenant going forward. So that's, hey, I got 2 minutes to spare.
Thank you very much, Mr. Burton. Are there questions for the delegation? Councillor O'Meara.
Mr. Burton, I want to thank you first and foremost because I've heard you speak over a number of years on this, and I know your passion. And if it weren't for individuals like you, we wouldn't have half of the green space that we have across Ontario. So thank you very much for that, and I respect that very much. I was one of the councillors who was fortunate enough to be at the Deerfield Golf Course in 2018 when it was announced that it was being transferred to the town and the Merton lands were being transferred to the town, and that at no way forward would the province be selling it for as many high rises that could get, as close as they could get. And that's about the assurance at most that you can get these days from the provincial government. I guess my question to you is, there's a house and a residential property on there now. The town wants to move to make it a green space and a conservation space and add it into the natural heritage system as we move forward. Again, knowing full well that the provincial government can do whatever it wants whenever it wants to us, as we have learned. Do you think we are better served by maintaining a residential nature on that property or moving forward to protect it today as a green space and a natural heritage space?
As you said, you can't trust what the provincial government will do. And my argument is you are running a very high risk if you ask for a change of permitted use. They could then turn around and say, under our agreement, we can buy the property back. You got 60 days to fix it or we're buying it back. And so sometimes you just let sleeping dogs lie, let it all mellow out for another 3 or 4 years. The province gets a little less antsy about the green space, and maybe it'll, and maybe even you might come to the conclusion that, hey, having nice tenants like these guys aren't such a bad idea. They never phone us, they maintain the grass. But, and so that's what I think. It gives you lots of time to avoid it. Maybe I'll rephrase it. It puts off the risk of the province getting high-handed on taking this land back.
Okay, Your Worship, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Mr. Burton.
You're welcome.
Councillor Elgar, it's now in order to move a motion to meet in a session closed to the public, if that's still your wish.
Mayor Burton, I would move that to the end of the meeting. We could meet and then we could deal with all the other issues we have tonight. This could take a while, that's what I'm thinking. So I think it's better if we could move that to the end of the meeting and do our discussion items.
Well, Councillor, I don't really think it's going to be that long, but under my authority to move things around, I'm happy to move this down to the end of the meeting. It's a little bit of an inconvenience to Ms. Bolton and Mr. Burton because, they have to wait. But if there's no objection, I'm moving that item to the end of the meeting.
Thank you.
All right, then, council, the next item is discussion items 9.1 and 9.2. 9.1, we have a delegation. This is the matter of the public consultation plan for the Lakeshore Road West improvements from Mississauga Street to Dorval. And we have a delegation. Madam Clerk, would you call the delegation?
The delegation for this item is Chris Bradbrook.
Good evening, everybody.
Welcome, Mr. Bradbrook.
Hi, welcome to you. Thank you very much. As you heard, my name's Chris Bradbrook. I live in Ward 2, and I will be directly affected by this project. I'll endeavour to be as brief as possible. I see I've got a big reminder there. Not sure if I'm standing on a trap door. Well, there's a hook waiting for me if I go over, but I'll be as brief as I can. Most of what I have to say is in the form of questions, because I believe...
Sorry, I have a point of order, Your Worship. I apologize. Do we not get a presentation on the item before? Or?
You don't have to. You don't have to. I've just
because your questions might really directly pertain to the presentation. I'm just not sure what the order is, and I apologize.
Oh, I see what I mean. Not me, not a presentation from me. Do I get any extra time, by the way, for interrupting?
We'll start you over.
I apologize. If I'm out of order, Your Worship, I apologize for that. But I'm not sure.
I thank you, Councillor. Mr. Bradbrook, please relax, and let's hope that your questions are answered by the presentation.
Oh, okay. Yes, so I just keep going?
But no, pause.
Go back?
We're gonna restart the clock for
Wasn't that
you
boring,
after
was
the
it?
presentation.
You've heard worse. You must have heard worse. I've been sent back already.
You know, you should be a happy guy. Mr. Philip Kelly, the Manager of Design and Construction, has a presentation for us.
Okay. Good evening, all. Good evening, Mayor Burton and members of council. The purpose of this presentation is to go over the proposed public engagement and consultation process for the Lakeshore Road West improvements from Mississauga Street to Dorval Drive. Director Jill Stevens, she sends her regrets. She was unable to make it tonight. Luckily for me, I found out a few hours as opposed to a few minutes before the presentation, so I had ample time to prepare. So I hope I can do the presentation justice.
I would just ask that you speak up and into the microphone.
Here we go. Thank you. So the Lakeshore, a little bit of overview of the Lakeshore West study history. So there's been a substantial amount of time and effort spent to date to reach this point of the project. You might recall that in 2009, the town's livable Oakville plan and an active transportation master plan both identified the need for improvements along Lakeshore Road West between Mississauga Street and Dorval to meet the town's vision and anticipated growth needs to 2031. Both plans provided direction for road improvements, modal split, and achieving a greater connectivity for all transportation modes throughout Oakville. From these plans, there's been a long and complex process of study and consultation over the past 6 years. In 2016, the town initiated the Lakeshore Road West environmental assessment to assess current and future traffic needs and to improve vehicle, cyclist, and pedestrian movement and safety. Then we moved on to 2018, where the draft environmental study report was presented to council, and staff were directed to further consult with the community and report back with recommendations to include at least one option reflecting no continuous center left turn lane, no loss of trees, and no expropriation of property. Further traffic analysis justified the removal of the center turn lane, and as a result, the road widening was no longer required, and hence the class environmental assessment process was also no longer required. We did elect to continue with the Class EA process because it did provide a very convenient forum for public consultation. In 2019, Council directed that a scenic corridor study be completed and the Class EA study scope be amended to incorporate the findings. Finally, in July 2021, the revised environmental study report was presented to Council where the EA design was received and staff were directed to conclude the Class EA study. We are at this point now. So to recap what transpired in July 2021, the following motion was passed: that the detailed design will include options to limit tree loss, options to limit the taking of private property, options to provide a multi-use trail in blocks 2, 3, and 4, an analysis of climate change impacts, opportunity for further public consultation, and additional investigation of drainage options to maintain a rural profile. Now, as we know, no study stands alone. So in addition to the Lakeshore Road Class Environmental Assessment Study, there's other background studies that will shape where we move as we move forward. These are some of them, not all: the Town of Oakville Scenic Corridor Study, the McCraney Bridge Environmental Study Report, just recently completed, the Town of Oakville Stormwater Master Plan, the Coronation Park Drainage Improvement Study, Town of Oakville Active Transportation Master Plan, and switching gears, Town of Oakville Transportation Master Plan. Now on this slide, I'm outlining some of the key stages through the design process. And just to be clear, at this point in time, we have no preferred design for the Lakeshore Road design from Mississauga to Dorval. So we're starting from a clean slate, where multiple design alternatives will be developed, and through the design process, the alternatives will be narrowed down through multiple rounds of public engagement and with input from council at each stage, with the goal to arrive at a final design at the end. Now, as we carry on through the Lakeshore Road study and through the public consultation process, there's a variety of tools and tactics that are available to us. Examples include both in-person, virtual meetings, online content, and media releases. Also, it's important to reach out to those who don't typically participate in these studies. And we will use a variety of tools, such as surveys, to reach the wider community. Now, there's a wide variety of public stakeholders in Oakville who have an interest in the Lakeshore Road improvements. And this slide shows some of the stakeholders that will participate in the outreach sessions and that will be continuously engaged throughout the design development. And these groups are split for the purposes of this slide, just as by interest. So you've got Greater Oakville, you've got various environmental groups, you've got schools, people interested in active transportation and safety. You've got people who are interested in the historical components of Lakeshore Road. You've got business improvement areas and residents associations, and you have Indigenous groups. Also, as mentioned, we'll be taking a proactive approach on outreach by actively reaching out to groups who don't normally participate, as we are interested in their view on this important corridor as well. Public engagement. So this is the heart of what's lying ahead of us, what we're proposing. So the overall engagement and consultation process is aimed to be inclusive and clear to help build confidence amongst stakeholders and their participation, and to let them know that their participation will have a meaningful impact on decision-making and the outcomes of the design. Starting consultation early and making it continuous and open throughout the project will be critical to obtaining public input, to obtaining public feedback, explaining the decision-making, and maximizing consensus and support. While all input and feedback received will be considered throughout the detailed design development, the final design will be a balance of competing interests and engineering requirements. For example, improvements to stormwater and traffic management, pedestrian movement and safety, and environmental resilience are required outcomes of the project. Staff will ensure that the design options brought forward are supported by a comprehensive technical review and that the evaluation criteria is transparent. We will ensure that the community has a strong understanding of the project and that council will have the necessary information and support they need to make decisions. So, our lines of communication to the public will be maintained throughout the duration of the project. The public engagement and consultation project includes the following formal engagement rounds planned at key stages of the project. So, round one, that's what we call pre-engagement. And in this round, we developed tailored stakeholder engagement plans. So it's really a building block activity that takes place at the start of the project between the town and key stakeholders. Here, we're proposing to have various small stakeholder meetings will be held with the groups that were involved throughout the EA study, and will center on asking what types of outreach methods work best for their groups and why, understanding perceptions of previous engagement, expectations for the project, and opportunities to leverage stakeholder group communication networks once the management program is launched, our desired outcome from this round of outreach and consultation. So following the pre-engagement round, the project team will prepare an engagement process that will guide the team's efforts to inform, consult, and collaborate with the public over the course of the project. The process will remain flexible and will be subject to refinement to ensure a tailored approach centered around the project objectives. While the process itself will be flexible, it will include stakeholder analysis, communications plan, and an engagement strategy. And those three items are detailed in the report. One thing I would like to mention is the stakeholder analysis component will also include a very detailed stakeholder register to effectively track all comments and responses over the course of the project. So engagement round one. So that's at project launch. So this will take place at the onset of the project and has two stages. The first stage is to launch the project in the public realm with the purpose to collect input and design priorities for consideration in the development of multiple preliminary design options. The intention is to understand the various interests, visions, and preferred outcomes from each group and to provide information about the approach to the issues in a way that helps audiences contextualize choices being made around the design options. We will then, in stage two, present back to the public a summary of what the project team heard and gathered so that everything is clear to the public in terms of what we heard and how we're proceeding going forward. Engagement round two. So engagement round two will occur at the 30% design project. Here, multiple preliminary design options will be presented to the public and contributing stakeholder groups, along with the design criteria, as well as evaluation criteria. Further, we'll be asking for feedback on the preliminary design options will be collected and evaluated for advancements of these options. So at this stage, we have multiple or many design options. So this engagement round two will conclude with a report to council that provides recommendations and seeks directions for further development of the selected preliminary design options. Engagement round three. Engagement round three will occur at the 60% design stage, where the selected preliminary designs from round two will be evaluated and presented to the public and to council. Similar to the previous round, various engagement opportunities will be held to collect feedback from the public and share the factors that influence the decision-making. At this stage, staff will once again prepare a report for council, summarizing the public feedback received and staff's recommendation for the preferred design option to be advanced through to final design. Engagement round four. So at engagement round four, this occurs at the 90% design. And at this stage, we'll only have one design to present to council. And again, staff will then bring a report to council, evaluating and presenting the final design option for approval and incorporation into the 10-year capital budget and forecast. And finally, engagement round five. And this occurs at and after the 100% design is complete. And it will take, the purpose of this round is to inform the public on the final design and communicate the construction timeframe and program, prior to and during construction, a public liaison will act as an important connection between the community and the project team on a day-to-day basis to keep the lines of communication open. So ultimately, the goal is to facilitate a successful public engagement process. So what does success look like? Well, to us, success looks like an engaged public sharing local knowledge and perspectives, inspiring confidence within the community about the collective handling of the project, a wider community that is motivated to contribute, a context-sensitive and field-fit design, and council having all the information and support they need to make informed decisions. The project team for the Lakeshore Road West detailed design is committed to actively listening to public input and feedback and to proactively communicating in a clear and purposeful way about the project during each round of engagement and throughout the entire project. A trackable, manageable, and well-documented engagement program will be provided that considers equity, accessibility, and utilizes technology appropriately. Upon acceptance of this report, the Lakeshore Road West Detailed Design Project will be initiated and the launch of round one will commence. The project team will report back to council by late 2023 when the preliminary design options are anticipated to be proposed for review. Thank you, Mayor, members of council. That concludes the presentations. We'll open it up to questions or to delegations.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kelly. You've generated several questioners. We're going to start with Councillor Dudek, and then Councillor Chisholm, and then Councillor Elgar and Councillor Haslett-Deal. Councillor Dudek.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you very much for the presentation, Philip. And given the amount of work that has gone into this project up until now has been considerable, and the fact that we're coming to the public without, what shall I say, preconceived options of design, which I think was what a lot of people were concerned about. We're actually not even there yet. The first is the public engagement, correct? In terms of setting the criteria, the concerns, whether it's tree loss, the way we deal with stormwater management, various other things, correct?
Through you, Mayor Burton, that is correct. We do not have a preferred design at this time.
Okay. The one thing I did see that gave me concern, and I appreciate the door hangers and other ways to communicate, especially when it comes to the Lakeshore Road residents. Can we have that mailed to them? I know that Councillor Chisholm and I sent individual letters prior to us having a meeting at Sir John Colborne way back when, and that had a considerable impact in terms of raising the issue for them. I'm just a little concerned with people who travel or whatever, and given the fact we might be dealing with things that directly impact their properties, fronting rather, onto Lakeshore would be appreciated. So if I can just leave that for your consideration. You did mention in the course of your presentation how we've modified things thus far. You mentioned what shall I say, discontinuation of pursuing a third lane, a left turn lane, except where it's an intersection that required to have that traffic mitigation take place. There was no mention, and I'm just raising it for those around the table who haven't been part of this process thus far. There was at one point a roundabout at Third Line that was discussed, which also was taken off the table. So even from 400 trees supposedly being lost, we've now scaled back to a much more manageable, but even still not agreeable number. So all those factors go into it going forward. I just want to share that for my colleagues who are new at the council table as to the background. But I do appreciate the fact that, as you say, this is we're not dealing with the design, we're not approving anything. What we're dealing with is solely the public engagement process by which you've laid out to make sure everybody's fully informed throughout, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Councillor Dudek. Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the presentation, Philip. Very concise, and I'm quite pleased with the stages we're putting in place. I like the clean slate and starting this because it's a very sensitive area all the way through from Mississauga right down to Dorval, and it has its different nuances throughout the development. Concern, because we're such a lineal project, that representation, and Councillor Dudek just mentioned that with the, we have an older population. Mail-outs are very important to the residents, and may I suggest that we go out further than the requirement under the Planning Act, further, because it does impact West Oakville in a lot of ways, so I think that's very important. I know it takes more onto your plate, but it is required because it's such a large project. The other thing I want you to consider is to look at the financial implications. I think with the initial, probably your budget forecast for this might not be in line to what we're doing now with respect to the public engagement. As this report stands, it is on public engagement. It's really making sure that we cross all the T's and dot the I's and make sure we have good representation from all our members in the community. Because this is a large project, and I think it's going to be highlighted throughout Oakville to see how we deal with sensitive projects, knowing full well the closeness of our residents to the roadway and all the issues we have with floodplain and drainage and so forth. I guess the question, it's more of a statement, but my question is, are we going to have a project manager on this project like we did with downtown Oakville? When we did that, are we having somebody full-time that we can refer to?
Through you, Mayor Burton. So once we get to the final design and it gets to the implementation stage, where project management will be very key, talking about when construction is coming, how traffic is going to be diverted, how access is going to be maintained to properties. The plan is to have a liaison retained by the town, yes.
Okay, and my next question, because that's on the technical side of it, the project management, as we've all been concerned about not being prescriptive on this project and having the true community engagement, who are the skill sets that we're looking for to put us through these community engagement program? Is it the consultants who hopefully they'll have that kind of skill set to involve our community, or is it staff taking on the role of community engagement as the facilitators, I guess I should look at it?
Through you, Mayor Burton. So we went through a fairly rigorous consultant retention process to retain the consultants for this public consultation and design process. We put together a very thorough terms of reference, which actually mandated that the consultants review and watch the July 2021 council meeting, because a lot of good information in that council meeting. We also made sure that the firms that were shortlisted for consideration weren't just engineers, that they had public consultation experts. And then to make the final selection, we actually interviewed a variety of firms to see how they could dance, how they could answer questions, what public consultation skills they have. And with that, we arrived at a firm called SEMA, which is a local Canadian firm with local knowledge, and they have a very thorough and extensive public consultation team.
Thank you, and thank you for letting us know who the consultant is, SEMA. I don't like to get into the weeds, but a question would be, is it possible that we could get some kind of outline with respect to how we're going to present these to the stakeholders in general, what the strategy will be and how we're going to do that? I would have a comfort level, and I think Councillor Dudek would have a comfort level knowing how this is going to roll out. There are different ways of doing community engagement through the facilitation. I would like to know the mechanics of that, if that's all possible.
I'm assuming, yes, we can provide additional details in a follow-up memo.
And thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chisholm. Councillor Elgar?
Mayor Burton, my questions have been addressed already. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Elgar. Councillor Haslett-Deal.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. So just a couple follow-ups. You mentioned all the interrelated studies, and a practice that the staff have used in other sort of complicated consultations is a web page dedicated to that specific project. Is that something you can provide? Because the list of possible stakeholders is quite large, and when I looked at that list of studies, I'm sure they're going to be in multiple places on the website. It can be quite challenging for people to find the material. So would there be a dedicated webpage for this project?
Through you, Mayor Burton, yes, we plan to have a dedicated webpage for this project.
Okay. My other question is around, you mentioned a registry. So will all the public comments from all the different stakeholder groups be recorded or transcribed and available for everybody? So again, from that great effort that you're making to build trust, to come to a good decision at the end, will all those comments be available to everyone?
Through you, Mayor Burton, I believe we could help facilitate that, yes.
Okay, thank you. And my last question is just around, you mentioned narrowing it down. So I don't expect you to answer this tonight, but at some point, can we just understand what narrow it down, like what's the protocol to narrow it down? Because you can have 40 people passionate about something, you know, and is it a numbers narrowing it down? Is it a weighted average? Is it putting different weights on different values related to what's important on the project? It's just, again, from a trust and transparency perspective, it would be helpful to understand that more.
Yes, through you, Mayor Burton, the evaluation criteria will be a transparent process. And as we go from many designs to a few designs to one design, we will make that evaluation criteria transparent, and people should be able to see the flow of the project from many down to a few, down to one design.
Perfect, thanks very much. I really like the part on the slide where you said context sensitive and field fit design. I think that's really at the heart of what people want to get to. So thank you for the effort you put into this, and we look forward to the consultation.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you very much, Mr. Kelly. When we started out on this path in 2016, 2018, it feels like generations ago, pre-COVID, we were in one place and we've dragged along to a few places. What I don't really see is a recognition of where we have gone in the past 8 months. I don't see how we're going to accommodate what we just did the other night, 33,000 new homes in 10 years. I don't see how we're going to accommodate those sorts of connections. I don't see any changes or even the conversation that we're going to have with residents about what we're going to do to what the province has mandated us to do and how we're going to move those people. I see shrinking, I see condensing, I see maneuvering. Lakeshore Road is a major corridor of transportation east-west. And if we are forced to add these people into this town, I don't understand how we're going to start having that conversation right now. And can you please tell me how that conversation is going to happen, or how the plan here is going to accommodate the changes that just happened 6 months ago? Because I haven't seen or heard or read anything that even addresses that. I'd be interested in hearing your comments on that.
Oh, good question. I think that would be best left to a future report to council as part of the Lakeshore Road design process.
Councillor, I'm not sure it's fair to put the matter to Mr. Kelly that way. This is about creating a process of engagement with the public. It's not about what we build, where we build, how big it is. All of those factors are going to be part of the input to the discussion about what do we need and how can we get there in the most agreeable way. So I think with respect, that's in already. Because it's in the air, it's in the atmosphere, it's in our decisions. Those are givens.
Well, I hope so, and I agree with that. I don't know if they're givens. I think a lot of people still think we're dealing with what we were dealing with before, so I appreciate that, and I'm happy to hear that. And just as long as I leave staff with the fact that that should be a major flashing beacon in our communications and in our consultation plan, I'd be happy to run away with that, Your Worship.
I think you should be happy. All right. I don't see any more questions, and so I would like to entertain our delegation, Mr. Cranbrook. And Chris, as you can see, we've reset the clock.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm curious to know if you have remaining questions. Did any of your questions get answered?
Well, I've read the draft report, so I had a sense of what was in it. So, to be blunt, I think a lot of it's just words. It's how it's carried out that matters. So if you indulge me.
Well, we're happy to hear your words.
Okay, well, you haven't heard them yet. You might not change your mind once you heard them. But most of what I have to say is in the form of questions, because I believe in acceptably answering these questions is where support for this project will or will not come. And I'll focus on two key points. The first is the interaction with residents to date and going forward, because I think the track record of the past sort of influences the way I look at what was just presented, and the statement by the town that they do not have a preferred design. So with respect to the interaction of residents to date, put simply, residents have not been kept proactively informed. Those of us that have been able to find out details of studies, meetings, and the ability to provide comments have done so through our own investigation and word of mouth. This is not acceptable and has to change. So that has to be, in my view, built in as a promise inside that plan that was presented. And through these imperfect interactions, the input of the majority of residents has been consistently ignored. In the May 2021 online responses and those from delegates at the July 6, 2021 council meeting, more than 70% expressed opposition to the then proposed plan and their concerns with the proposed tree removal. So, I've pulled these things apart. So if anyone wants to sit down and go through them with me, I'm happy to do it. But it's not an opinion. Those are the real numbers. And this is an emphatic vote of no confidence in the plans proposed by the town. Now, I've been involved in building a number of large mining projects and can say it's rare to get such a one-sided opinion and even harder to ignore it if it's going to be accepted by the community. Now, given my prior comments regarding communication to date, the logical follow-up question is as follows. Will the next stage of the process be transparent and proactively communicated to all residents? And I mean all residents. If so, how? And if not, why not? I get regular emails about coyotes, but nothing about this. And I think you're talking about, Councillor Dudek mentioned people along Lakeshore. I think you definitely have to expand that because I live 30 yards or meters north of Lakeshore. So I'm going to be affected by it. But if it's just people on Lakeshore, I won't get those mailings. And to be blunt, I have to say the lack of proactive communication regarding the opportunity to participate in this meeting will suggest the town is yet to meet this objective. It's not a good start. All you had to do was in the regular emails to people who subscribe, put a notice in there. The only reason I found out about this is because a member of the town, because I guess I complained so much, finally decided to try and, keep me quiet and said, you could attend this meeting. But that's not really how it's supposed to work. And when the input of residents is provided, will the town listen to the comments, concerns and opinions of the residents and adjust the project accordingly? If not, why not? Because that has not been the case so far. And I really have a fundamental question is, why won't the town engage directly with the residents? Why are we using a third-party consultant? The town has had ample time to do this. Between the July 6, 2021 meeting and the issuance of the RFP in August of 2022, more than 14 months passed, and there was no communication from the town to the residents. None. Zero. And given prior input from the residents, how could the RFP have been prepared to achieve an acceptable outcome without additional input from the residents? So that brings me to the question of, is there a preferred design or not? On page 51 of the RFP, issued in August of 2022, in the summary of deliverables, the consultants told it is to, and I quote, complete and present to the town the preliminary design of 3 options to meet the various objectives of the Lakeshore West EASR. Now, while maintaining the preferred concept, so that those words are in the RFP, presented in the Lakeshore West EA. This is the same preferred concept presented to Council at the July 6, 2021 meeting. So whilst it may be true that no preferred concept has been approved by Council, the town continues to indicate its preferred outcome. The outcome is not the preferred outcome of the overwhelming majority of residents. And finally, I would like to say or ask, have all reasonable alternatives really been considered? Lakeshore Road West has recently been widened and resurfaced from East Street to 4th Line. There is now sufficient room to add bike lanes, which would basically complete the main aims of some of this project, proactively and cost-effectively. Has this been considered? The main objection to what was presented as previously as the preferred concept is the loss of trees. The proposed multi-use path on the south side of Lakeshore is the main cause of tree loss. It will be if it's built, it'll be a 3.5 kilometre path between East Street and 4th Line, and essentially from and to nowhere, which will take around 10 minutes to cycle on, even for the slowest rider. People would have to enter and exit it from the road or sidewalk. So it's not like it's a safe, enclosed space. So I would ask, what exactly is the benefit of this project, given the concerns it has created? Now, I realize I'm just one person. I've got my opinions, but it's the interest of the majority that matters. What I do hope to see, however, is a process that is transparent, proactively engages with residents, and most importantly, actually listens to what they have to say and develops a plan reflecting the results of that engagement. The residents who will foot the bill deserve nothing less. So thank you once again for your time and opportunity to speak and for not opening the trapdoor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bradbrook.
Thank you.
If you would linger, Mr. Bradbrook, Councillor Chisholm would like to entertain you with a question.
Yep. Thank you for your comments, and I do agree with some of the issues we had in the past, but we're moving forward. The report that was presented tonight, are you comfortable with because it's mostly talking about community engagement and how we're going to deal with this. Are you comfortable with this process?
Well, I guess it really depends what they do. I mean, those are just words on a piece of paper, right? I mean, there's been nice words written before. It's really what someone does. So I personally don't think that plan should be accepted until there's assurances in there that it will be proactively and widely, all these stages, to the residents.
So I think we're saying the same thing. The report itself is engaging the community, which we believe is the appropriate way to do it this going forward. And what I'm asking for you, aside from your transparency and so forth, let's put that aside. Mm-hmm. The process itself, are you comfortable with the process that was presented tonight?
If there's a guarantee in it that the residents will be proactively informed of all the steps, mm-hmm, in a way that they can all access it, because that hasn't happened to date, and that what the majority say, the project reflects that. Okay. And I think that should go into that plan, is my view.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Cranbrook, if you took note of the questions from council tonight of Mr. Kelly, you would have heard them telling staff that they want those things to be part of the process. And I hope that will allow you to be happier about it.
Well, I heard that, but it's not the same as actually having it as part of the motion to approve it.
It is actually. We call it a direction to staff. We don't forget, they don't forget.
Okay. And well, I guess if that's the final resolution, then I'll be happy.
One final effort to cheer you up a little bit.
I'm not miserable. I did make some jokes.
Well, I'd like to offer you a bit of a smile back.
Yeah.
We're here tonight, and as a result of a process where council refused to accept the staff's preferred design. So somebody was listening to somebody.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that.
Thanks for your time tonight.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Oh, Councillor O'Meara,
Oh, sorry.
we got a
Sorry.
few.
Sir, we like getting we like to have you get your steps in.
You just want this trap door to open.
I just, and again, I want to sort of re-echo what the mayor said, but did you read the staff report tonight?
The one that
The
was...
report for tonight, yes.
Yes.
And on page 107, and I just want to be clear, because what the preferred design that you mentioned in the 2022 RFP, it's listed here very clearly on page 107. And what it does is it outlines every single thing that residents had an issue with.
Yes,
and said, you need to come, that's what our preferred design is. So it's not that staff, it's councils, and I guess my question is, are you okay with the 12 points that are listed on page 107 that clearly illustrate what the residents said we need to have as a must-have in a preferred design?
I think that 12, sorry, did I cut you off there?
No, please go.
The 12 excellent points, I agree with them all. But again, I'll reiterate my points. As long as the residents are actively listened to and the majority views acted on. Because having good points is great, but if you're not actually listening to people and doing something about what they tell you, then it's not any point.
We're all 100% with you, but when you said early that they already had a pre-designed approved list, and here it was, but that list is right here in our report in front of us, and that list comes from your comments and everyone's comments. That's council's preferred list because we heard you, and that's what we were after. Are you okay with that?
I'm okay with the points, but no, it doesn't change the fact the actual RFP said they should base it around the preferred design.
Fair enough. We're good. We're on the same page. Thank you, Your Worship.
I'm good?
I think we can finally say thank you for the final time.
Yeah, we're good? Yeah? That was, okay.
Levity has entered. Councillor Chisholm, your hand is up. Did I make a mistake here?
Your Worship, just a comment, a friendly amendment to the recommendation, if we could also provide, and I don't know if it's the detail or in the body of the report, that we have mail-outs put in the report, and it's extended above and beyond the Planning Act or the bylaw, I guess it is, on the radius of mail-outs. And also that the website, it'll be on the website. I think they just need to be a landing page. We need to identify that in the report somewhere.
I'm hearing that you'd like a greater degree of clarity on the mail-out distance, and I'm wondering if you would be happy with double the given distance. And you also probably want to mention the registry.
Correct.
All righty. We will look after those things. I'm going to accept your motion, including those elements. And we don't need a seconder. We're in a committee of the whole. And I'm going to put the vote. Is there any objection? Congratulations, Councillor Chisholm. Your motion carries unanimously. Now, 9.2, the Centennial Cup sponsorship. Staff are available, and I think we need to hear from staff because the decision date has come and gone, I thought, for the award of the host city. So, Ms. Storms.
Through you, Mayor Burton, as far as I'm aware, the date was pushed out and they have not made a decision yet, but are expecting to make one any day.
Because there's an announcement on Hockey Canada's website about Portage hosting the Junior A, but this is the Junior A, as I understand it. All right, so that means that we're not out of the game yet. So, Ms. Storms.
Through you, Mayor Burton, I don't have a presentation, but I am available if there's questions.
All right.
Your Worship, just point of order. Yeah, I don't think we need a presentation. I'd be happy to move it.
Okay. Are there questions? Councillor O'Meara.
Tourism.
Sorry, your worship, I'm doing a lot of bingo tonight, and I apologize for that. I just want to maybe take my hat off for a minute and put the other hat off as Chair of Visit Oakville, and just say that the Tourism Board is so excited to be behind this bid, and put more money than we've ever done before towards this bid, because it's just what we are as Oakville and what we want to celebrate and highlight the great infrastructure we have in Oakville, and we're so happy to also be a part of this bid. So fingers crossed, and thank you very much, Rebecca, for you and the team and every bit of work you've done. And your worship, I know you have been an incredible agent and advocate for this bid as well. So we are so very happy to be a part of that, and personally myself as well. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much, Councillor, for those kind words and your strong support. I'm going to put the vote. Is there any objection to the motion? Madam Clerk, that carries unanimously, and I would ask that you make the minutes show that it was a recorded vote. And we have no confidential discussion items. We have advisory committee minutes to be received from the Accessibility Advisory Committee. Councillor Giddings, thank you for the motion. Any objection? Councillor Giddings, congratulations, your motion carries. And now, Councillor Elgar, we're at the point to rise and report, but we're going to dial back to 8.1 now.
Thank you, Mayor Burton.
And I have here, if I can get to it. So on your behalf, I've crafted a bit of a motion, which I'm going to assume, well, when I read it, I'll check and see if you're going to move it. So in accordance with Section 6 of the Procedure Bylaw, as well as the Municipal Act, in Part 2, under provisions A and C and E and F, which are security of the property of the municipality, a proposed acquisition or disposition of land, a matter concerning litigation or potential litigation, and F is advice, solicitor-client privilege, and the communications necessary for that. Is that your motion?
That is my motion. Thank you.
All righty. Is there an objection to Councillor Elgar's motion? All right, that carries unanimously, and we're going to take we know from experience it takes a while to rig the chamber for this kind of meeting, so we're going to take a 10-minute recess. All right, council has met in a session closed to the public for the purpose of considering the security of the property of the municipality, a possible acquisition or disposition of land, the consideration of litigation or potential litigation, and the receipt of advice subject to solicitor-client privilege and the communications for that purpose. And the matter before council now is a motion, the public motion, which would be that the confidential staff report dated March 14th, 2023, entitled 1094 Third Line Lease Update from the Legal Department be received. And if that motion carries, I will then be authorized to reveal to the public what we've decided, because I can't reveal it until you decide it. So the motion was duly moved some time ago by Councillor Adams, and I will, with your consent, I will put the vote. All right, I'll take that for consent. I'm putting the vote. It's been requested that we have a recorded vote. This may not seem that meaningful, but it will be after I say what we've decided if we decided. Everybody good with that? All right. Madam Clerk, would you call the vote?
Mayor Burton.
Yes.
Councillor Adams.
No.
Councillor Chisholm. Councillor Duddick.
No.
Councillor Elgar.
No.
Counselor Giddings?
Point of order.
Yeah, point of order. I think there was
Can we
some
get
confusion here.
clarification what we're voting on, please?
All right.
Thank you.
Can I have your attention, please? To vote in favor of what you decided in camera, you will vote yes. To vote against it, either because it's too much or too little, but anyway, you want to vote against it, you will vote no. Are we all clear now? Madam Clerk, would you begin again?
Mayor Burton?
Yes.
Counselor Adams?
No.
Counselor Chisholm?
Yes.
Counselor Duddick?
Yes.
Counselor Elgar?
No.
Counselor Giddings?
Yes.
Counselor Grant?
Yes.
Counselor Haslett-Thiel?
Yes.
Counselor Knoll?
Yes.
Counselor Lischina?
Yes.
Counselor Longo?
Yes.
Counselor O'Meara?
No.
Counselor McNeese?
Yes.
Counselor Shi?
Yes.
Counselor Nanda?
Yes.
The motion carries.
Motion carries 12-3. All right. Council has confirmed a staff recommendation to end further extensions of the lease for the property in question. Council has also directed staff to offer the tenant a 6-month extension subject to conditions. And with that, that is the matter that we have covered tonight. If everybody agrees, and if someone will move it, we can rise and report to council now. Councillor Duddick, thank you. Any objection? There being none, that carries. I rise and report the Committee of the Whole has met and made recommendations on consent items 7.1, 7.2, 7.3, 7.4, 7.5, 7.6, confidential consent item 8.1, discussion items 9.1 and 9.2, and advisory committee minutes 11.1, as noted by the clerk. I would ask for a mover and seconder to adopt the report. Councillor Shi and Councillor Adams, thank you. Any objection? That is carried. Thank you, everybody. Is there any new business that anyone would like to bring forward of a condolence or emergency or congratulatory nature? Councillor Adams?
Thank you very much. I actually want to speak very briefly to item 13.2, which is the memo regarding the annual indexing of development charge rates. I wonder if our staff will be able to provide us with a monthly total of the revenue losses that we're now seeing because of the changes in Bill 23 and the transition.
Through you, Mayor Burton, yes, we can do that.
Thank you very much. I look forward to that.
All right. Anybody else? Thank you. We have 2 requests for reports. Councillor Haslett-Thiel and Councillor Giddings request council approval for staff to provide a report containing options to allow the rollover of the annual $9,000 allocation for council community benefits through their elected term of office, consistent with the region's policy, rather than the town's different policy, which is it expires at the end of the year. And in order to allow councillors to have flexibility to support communication and ward needs. Is there an objection to ordering this report? There being none, that's approved. Thank you very much, councillors. Councillor McNeese and Councillor O'Meara seek approval for staff to prepare a report outlining the terms of reference, work plan, resources, and timing needed to create a comprehensive and integrated plan to better coordinate the vision, revitalization, and investments in Bronte Village, comparable to the approach taken for the Downtown Oakville Plan, their strategic action plan, and associated initiatives. Is there any objection to that report? There being no objection, that report is authorized by council. Congratulations, councillors. Would someone like to move consideration and reading of the bylaws? Councillor Giddings and Councillor Nanda, thank you. Any objection? There being none, that's carried. And the bylaw 2023-31, authorizing the expropriation of the required interests, item 7.3, and the confirmatory bylaw are read, considered, and passed. And thank you, everybody, for your many contributions to this meeting. It's been great working with you, and that ends our meeting.